Greetings everyone in this new video where we will create the material for the wood and for the cement. Right now we only have one material applying to this object, which is the rope. We need to create another material. So this is pretty simple. All you have to do is basically to just click on this to create a new slot and click on new to create a new material. And let's, for example, call it wood. For the wood material, you can definitely go through the procedural workflow to basically create the texture yourself, which technically will give you more variety, but probably you will have to do a crazy node work to achieve such a good result. That's why, for the sake of keeping everything easy, I actually want to use an already made material. In the resources folder that comes with this course, you will find something called images. And inside of images, you will find the wood material, which is the wood that we will use to texture our bridge. So we're going to use this material. So all you have to do basically is to click on your principal BSDF, Control Shift T, which will open this window. And basically these are the files that you will find in the course. But if we jump to the images folder, let's go to wood material. All you have to do is basically to select all of them, and let's just click on Principal Texture Setup. And Blender automatically will set up this material for you, adding everything together. Now, I kinda hate these labels and when it comes to shading, so that's why I'm going to click on this label and hit X to delete it. Let's click on this mapping and hit X to delete it. And also let's select this rerouting node and hit Control X to delete it while keeping the different links. And let's just move these here. I know that's just me and how I organize my different nodes. So yeah, this is my wood material. But here is something that is really important. We're not seeing the wood material. It is not applied. Well, because as we did before, we need to link this shader to a certain part of the geometry node tree. So let's just jump back to my geometry node editor, Control Spacebar, and where do we want to apply this material? Well, it should be applied on the wood. So basically I need to create the material. Let's add a set material node. It is this one. And basically I will follow this link just so that I can put this node at the end of the node tree so they will all be close to each other. Let's put it right here. And for the material that we want to apply, let's choose wood. Control space bar. And yeah, this is really perfect. We basically applied the material to these pieces of wood. But right now there is something really weird happening. It is some sort of a glitch. And here's what I mean. Basically when it comes to these wood materials, or let's say basically the objects, whenever we're using like image texture, not procedural stuff, we need to UV unwrap our model. But this is basically a geometry node setup. So how are we supposed to UV unwrap this object? I mean, if you hit tab, this is basically just a curve that we applied a modifier to it. So it is not like actual geometry. How can we UV unwrap a model so that everything will look right? Because as you can see, this texture looks a little bit weird. It is not the way a wood texture is supposed to look like. So right now, we need to UV unwrap our model. And this is actually pretty simple because the entire geometry node tree inside of Blender actually do store data about the UV maps. So right now, if I go right here and let's go Shift A and look for attribute, I'm going to delete this node by selecting it and hitting X. And let's take the color and plug it to vector. And just so that you can see what's happening, I'm going to hit Control Space Bar. Nothing is happening yet because we need some sort of data about the UV map. So let's click on this and let's type UV underscore map and hit enter, and boom. We basically right now do have our UV data right here, which is really nice. So we basically figured out a way of how to unwrap our model. And as you can see, we applied this wood material in the right way to all of these different objects. This is pretty sick. And right now it is about time to create the cement material right here. So yeah, let's just do that right now. Okay, so let's create the cement material. I'm going to jump back to my material tab. Let's add another slot to create another material. Click on new and let's call this cement. And for the cement, here's what we will do. I'm going to mix 3 noise textures, 3 gray noise texture to create the look I'm looking for. So let's start by doing that. Let's go Shift A and let's look for noise texture. Let's put it here and let's take the factor and plug it to the base color. You will not see anything because we need to link this material to a certain part in my geometry node tree. So let's go here let's jump to my geometry node editor, control space bar, and let's look for the mounts, which are right here. So go Shift A and let's look for set material. Let's put it here and let's choose the material, which is cement. This is pretty nice. Let's put all of these nodes right here. So I know all of my shading nodes are at the end of the node tree. Control space bar, and let's jump back to my shader editor. And right now, if you focus here, you will be able to see the noise texture right here. All right, so it is right now somehow elongated and it is stretched and all of that in an ugly way because we need to input some sort of data about how to map this texture. So let's go Shift A and let's look for texture coordinate, and let's take the object and plug it to vector, and also let's do a mapping node and let's just put it right here. And maybe let's bring the scale a little bit down to something like 0.5. And for the setting of this noise texture, let's bring this down to something like 4, and I'm just gonna keep the rest of these settings the way they are. The only thing I actually might do is basically to go Shift A and let's look for a color ramp, and I'm going to crank the contrast a little bit to something, let's say like so. I think it will be good. And for this color, I'm going to make it a dark gray, something like so. And for this other one, I'm going to make it a lighter gray color, something like so. This is more or less the color of cement. All right, so let's just move these here and let's add another noise texture. Let's take this and put it to the vector. Control Shift and click on it to see the actual noise texture and how it will look like. Let's bring this to 60, and basically this noise texture will be responsible to creating small bumps on the surface, because that's how actual cement should look like. It is a little bit bumpy, so this noise texture will help me to create this bumpiness to add this bumpiness to the surface of the cement. So the scale is a 60, I think it will be good. And maybe let's bring the roughness a little bit up to something like 0.8. So we will have more details, let's say. Let's add, just add a map range node. Let's bring the minimum a little bit up, let's say 0.5. From the maximum, let's say 0.7. I'm going to keep to minimum and to maximum the same way. And I'm going to mix this color ramp with this one. So let's go Shift A and let's look for mix RGB. And I'm going to put it right here. Oh no, I added the wrong node. I added a mix shader. X to delete it. I need a mix RGB, the first node. Let's take the color and plug it to the color number 1. And let's take this and plug it to base color. Control Shift and click on your Principled BSDF to see the final result. And I'm going to mix it with a dark color, something like so. And I'm going to take this map range, the output of this, and I'm going to plug it to the factor. And bam, as you can see, I added this little imperfection to the surface of this cement stone, let's say. I can also actually use both of these two nodes to drive also my normal socket. So let's go Shift A and let's look for a bump, because as you can see, this is a gray socket. If we want to plug it to a purple socket, we need to convert the data coming out of here to vector data, and the bump node will do that. So let's take the result and plug it to the height, and let's right now take the normal and plug it to the normal. The effect is right now a little bit too strong, so let's lower this to something like 0.4, and I can work with that, I guess. Maybe it is a little bit too strong, so maybe let's try 0.3, and yeah, let's just keep it the way it is for now. We can change it later easily. And let's also create some sort of a map to drive our roughness. So let's go Shift A and let's add another noise texture. Let's also link it with the rest of the mapping node. So let's take this and plug it to vector. For this noise texture, Control Shift and click on it to see how it will look like. Let's bring the scale to something like 7.5. And let's say for the roughness, let's say 0.8. I'm going to add another map range node. And for this map range, let's change the minimum value to something like 0.5. Let's lower this to something like, let's say 0.6. And I'm going to keep the rest of the values the way they are. And I'm going to take this result and I'm going to plug it to the roughness. Control Shift and click on your Principled BSDF. And as you can see, this will basically add this some sort of like glossiness or something. It is like a little bit reflecting the light, which is, I kind of love that effect on this cement stone or the cement mount. And this is basically our cement material. And let's just do this to clean this whole thing a little bit. And basically we technically right now finish shading our entire bridge. So yeah, the hardest thing are now done, and I will see you for a final video where we'll just have a general overview of what we did and the workflow that we went through and how you can actually manipulate and work with this bridge later on in the future. So yeah, I will see you in the next video, everyone.